There.
Oh.
Hello. Look at other.
Hello. How nice to see you all. Oh, we've missed you. It's so nice to see you. So, what's the weather like there? Yeah, it's nice, rather cool here. So, it's very nice. So, this is a warming for our hearts to be able to be with you all.
So we can see Bhaskar, half of him, but if anyone's on the other side of Bhaskar, we can't see you. We see Lakshmi and Nikhil, but whoever is next to Lakshmi, we don't see.
Beyond Tulasi and Jyoti, we can't see.
There we go, Prem.
Prem appeared.
Hi, Prem.
Okay.
And then who's next to Nikhil?
Who's by Nikhil?
No, the other side.
Nikhil, you can scoot over a little bit.
Okay. Darshan.
There we go, Darshan.
Okay. So you have to fit between Darshan and Bhaskar if you want to be on camera.
There's probably some space to add some chairs in the back. There's
we have a Kartik.
Okay.
Okay, and
good.
Babu and Bindu, are you there in the back?
Hello.
Very nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
They just took discipleship recently.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Congratulations.
And those are their children.
Very
with them.
nice children, too.
Yeah. Very nice to see you. Well.
Okay. Well, we'll do a typical kind of Sunday satsang. So we'll do a prayer and a little bit short meditation, then some readings. Devi and I'll talk a little bit and then have questions and answers. So let's pray together. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, Friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Shri Yukteswar, beloved Guru, Paramahansa Yogananda Ji, we humbly bow to you all. Help us to be constantly aware of your presence, of your light and joy. We are thine. Be thou ours. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Let's meditate together just for a few minutes.
Continue, please, friends, to focus inwardly, and let's listen to our topic from Affirmations for Self-Healing for today. This is on service. Service is ennobling. It is a way of offering our human littleness into the great reality that is God. Service should not be given with the thought that one is serving people merely. It should be given with an inward consciousness to the Lord, who resides in all creatures. When we serve others in this spirit, we find our own spirits become freed from egotism. Peace then fills us in the realization that there isn't anyone with whom we need compete. What joy to think that we belong to God. Now let's affirm together these words of Swami Kriyananda's. I'll say it and then you please repeat. And feel that you are absorbing these thoughts into your own consciousness. I will serve God through others.
I will serve God through others.
And by my service to Him, release the hold the ego has on me.
Release the hold the ego has on me.
I am free in God.
I am free in God.
In God I am free.
In God I am free.
Again, I will serve God through others.
I will serve God through others.
And by my service to Him,
and by my service to Him,
release the hold the ego has on me.
Release the hold the ego has on me.
I am free in God.
I am free in God.
In God I am free.
In God I am free.
Now whispering, I will serve God through others. And by my service to Him, release the hold the ego has on me. I am free in God. In God I am free. Now mentally only, repeat with me. I will serve God through others. And by my service to Him, release the hold the ego has on me. I am free in God. In God I am free. Please pray silently with me. All that I do, Lord, I do for love of Thee. Accept the flowers of my service to Thee as I place them on Thy altar of omnipresence. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. It's a beautiful reading. So now we'll read from Rays of the One Light by Swami Ananda, and this is the theme that Jyotish and I will talk about. The topic this week is the secret of right action. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. One of the most famous stories in the Gospels is that of Martha and Mary. Jesus, visiting the home of Martha, was teaching while her sister Mary sat at his feet, absorbing his divine love and wisdom. Martha, meanwhile, busied herself with serving her guests and was upset with Mary for not helping her. "Lord," she cried, "doesn't it matter to you that my sister has left me to do all this serving alone? Please ask her to help me." "Martha, Martha," Jesus answered, "thou art careful and troubled about many things. But one thing is needful, and Mary hath chosen that good part, which shall not be taken away from her." This story is classic, for Martha's complaint is very understandable and not, on the surface of it, spiritually wrong. Jesus may well have told Mary to get up and help her. We don't know that he didn't, considerate as he was always of others' needs. But the teaching here doesn't concern the obvious dilemma of devotees to work for God or to spend one's time in prayer. It concerns rather the attitude of the mind. Jesus didn't tell Martha, "Martha, you are doing too much." He rather told her, "You are letting your work affect your inner peace. That was the contrast. Not work versus contemplation, but restless preoccupation versus peaceful absorption under all circumstances. As it says in the Bhagavad Gita, the 2nd chapter, actions performed under the influence of desire are greatly inferior to those which are guided by wisdom. Happiness eludes people when they act from self-interest. Seek shelter, therefore, in the equanimity of wisdom. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
And I'll read just a short passage from Whispers from Eternity. These are prayer demands from Master. Demand to find God anytime, anywhere. Teach me, O Father, to find Thee in the cave of my heart, that I may walk with Thee everywhere. Teach me to hear Thee in silence, that I may hear Thy voice beneath outer noises. Teach me to find Thee in inner peace, that I may be with Thee calmly in the midst of outer tumult. Hubbub or silence, tumult or peace, I care not, so long as Thou wilt teach me to find Thee anywhere, at any time. So this is a very interesting passage that Devi read from the Gospels, because normally we see a difference between the work that we do and our spiritual life. That we do our meditations, we do our whatever our sadhana is, generally speaking, in the morning. Then we go off to work, and during that time, when we're at work, it's very hard to keep God in our consciousness. It's very hard to even remember to think of Him periodically, because we get very caught up in the work itself and in the dynamics, the people and what they've said and what we should respond, all of those complexities. And then we come home after work, and usually we're tired, perhaps we're a little distracted, and then we try to get back in to a peaceful state, at least somewhat before we go to bed. That's mainly, from our experience, the kind of rhythm for most devotees. It's very, very few people, that have the freedom to just sit in satsang all day, or just meditate all day, or meditate and read scripture and so on. Very few people have that kind of freedom in today's world. And so the real question here is, how do we keep some consciousness on God even in the midst of the daily activities? That's really what Jesus was saying to Martha, is it's not wrong that you're doing these activities, and it's not wrong that you're serving. It's wrong that you have forgotten your own inner peace. You've lost your own inner peace. You've come here, you're complaining about Mary not helping and so on. But mainly, as Swami Kriyananda points out in that, Jesus was not addressing the action, He was addressing the attitude. And so that's where, for devotees, the real cutting edge is trying to work with proper attitudes, trying to serve with proper attitudes. And so the reason I read that passage from Master's prayer is he talks about a method that can help us. First, we have to find that inner peace within. That is generally there in the morning, in our meditations, in our chanting, in our, when we focus and we've got our mind on God, on peace, on joy, on one of those qualities, then God seems closer to us. But when our mind gets distracted, then he seems farther away. And so the question is, how do we bring the closeness of God out of the quietness of, non-activity, of meditation or of being quiet within our own space? How are we able to bring that into the tumult of daily activity? And it's not easy. It simply isn't. So the things that we can do in order to help us with that is, if we can feel in a very authentic, real way that whatever work we're doing it as service to God, as opposed to that we're just going to a job. If we're just going to a job and we're thinking in terms of what I'm going to get out of this, am I going to get a promotion, am I going to get recognition, and so on, then those very thoughts will push God farther away. Because what those thoughts really, the underlying aspect of those thoughts is that we're thinking about ourselves. We're not thinking about other people. And so if while we're busy, if we can keep in mind at least somewhat the thought that I am doing this in order to serve you. Maybe it's my dharma to do this. Maybe I'm doing this simply because I obviously need to do something. I have to have a job to stay alive. And the purpose of being alive is to help me move closer to Thee. And so help me in this righteous activity, or this activity that I'm doing. Help me to do it in the right way. So we try to offer everything to God, including those things that don't seem on the surface to be very spiritual. What seems spiritual about going to a call center or going to some programming job or whatever your job is? That doesn't seem on the surface to be spiritual, but inside of that there will be always a relationship with people. Might be the relationship with co-workers, might be, if you're on a call center or something like that, the relationship with the people that you're trying to help. There's always a relationship with people inside of any activity. And if we can try in those relationships with people, try to see that in doing that, we're trying to serve them as well as we can with our skills, with our attitudes. We're trying to support them. And if we can, to go even the next step, to see everyone as a kind of an expression of Divine Mother, an expression of God. And sometimes that's relatively easy when somebody is very nice and easygoing and helpful and friendly. It's easy to see, oh, this person is filled with God. But when it's your boss yelling at you, then it's harder to see, oh, this is God yelling at me. And so but that even the fact that we're struggling to do that will help the mind move toward that consciousness, the world will constantly be trying to pull our energies out. That's part of the teaching of yoga. Why is meditation different from activity or, job activity? In essence, it isn't really different. It's just that in meditation, we're more mindful generally. We're more centered, and our consciousness is more on our relationship to God. And in the battle din of activity, as Yogananda called it, he said, in the battle din of activity, my silent war cry will always be God, God, God. So in the midst of the busyness, in the midst of the tumult of daily activities, if we can keep somehow reminding ourselves that everything is God, the people, that's God, the work, that's God, everything is God, God in activity or God in silence. But that's a goal to be striven for. It's not easy. Devi and I, one could say from the outside, oh, you have such easy jobs to keep God in mind. You're working with devotees and you're giving these teachings, and so it's easy to keep God in mind when you're doing that. But it's not easy to do my kind of job and keep God in mind. A lot of people have that thought, but we get just as forgetful of God as anyone else. It's not the kind of activity, it's not the work, it's the inner connection, it's the inner attitude with which we do that work. And that's what Jesus was trying to correct in Martha. Not the kind of work, but the inner attitude with which she was working, and trying to tell her, try to stay centered, try to stay peaceful, and try to stay, that Martha is, Martha, you're busy, whereas Mary is paying attention to the spiritual relationship here. Well, he could have had, as Swami said, he could have had Mary go and help Martha, but if Mary was in the kitchen working with Martha, but still thinking of Jesus, Jesus would have praised her for it. But if Mary was in the kitchen working with Martha, and they were both complaining about why aren't more people helping me, not thinking of, not being centered, not thinking of them, then he would have chastised both of them. See, so it always comes back to trying to hold an inner attitude and an inner connection. And admittedly, that is harder when we're in an environment that is not supportive. Because, as Master said, environment is stronger than individual willpower. But did Master get forgetful of God when he was in the midst of unpleasant circumstances? He wrote one time to his disciple, Dr. Lewis, how much he disliked having to go to these groups of businessmen, because in those days they all smoked cigars. And he said, my hair comes back and it reeks of smoke, and my clothes reek of the cigar smoke. And he said, and I used to just really dislike that. But, he said, I realized that Divine Mother is in smoke too. And that everything is Divine Mother. And he said, from that time on, the smoke never bothered me. And so if we can get that insight that Divine Mother is in this nasty boss, or Divine Mother is in this complaining customer, then they won't bother us anymore. Or they may continue to to act the same way, but it won't push our buttons because we've fixed that button. It doesn't work anymore for them to push it. And so gradually we go through life and we gain a kind of an equanimity and a kind of an acceptance of life. Master said we should try to be even-minded and cheerful. And gradually, as we keep doing that kind of daily work of trying to see God, trying to see Divine Mother, trying to see that spiritual essence in the midst of everything, gradually we become even-minded and cheerful, and then very little bothers us anymore. And we just don't have a lot of buttons that people can push. And then the last thing that I'll mention, then Devi will want to talk some, is that as we do that, we create a magnetic field around us. And so that magnetic field, when a person is in an inward connection with God, or is feeling peaceful, or holding on to the peace of meditation, or the joy of meditation, it creates a magnetic field around him. And somebody may come in perfectly prepared to argue with you, and they'll begin to feel that peace, and they'll forget what they were going to argue about. People would come to Swami Kriyananda wanting to ask him questions, or they were all upset about something, and they would get in his presence, and his presence was uplifted and peaceful and calm, and they would forget, and they would come out and they hadn't asked him any of those questions that were bothering them so much, because once their consciousness was lifted, those questions didn't apply anymore. And so as we keep our consciousness uplifted, the nagging energy of the world ceases to bother us very much anymore. And everything just seems okay. Okay, Devi will.
Well, it's as Jyotish said when he began, it's so nice to see you, and we so appreciate the opportunity to see you, and you can ask questions later, and just thank you all for staying in touch in many different ways. Just a little story I want to share of something that happened today. We saw some of you recently in Delhi at the Panchil Park Ashram. That was lovely. And but now we're back at Ananda Village for a while. We just got back from Los Angeles, where we had a big Yogananda Fest, we called it, like a spiritual fair. And many people came, and it was just wonderful. We had classes throughout it was all day long at this big kind of a civic community center. And we also had classes. There are many Spanish-speaking people in Los Angeles, so throughout the day we had how to meditate classes just in Spanish. And many, many people came throughout the day. And we had kirtan, Ananda yoga, meditation. It was all catered. We had wonderful Indian food throughout the day. People could come and eat. And it was just a wonderful day. And so we just got back from Los Angeles. And anyway, we're now at Ananda Village. And today Ananda Village is, some of you have come. We hope all of you can come someday. Beautiful 750 acres, beautiful forest and meadows, and little deer are walking all over. And in the central area, there's a big, like a plaza where people can sit, and there's a playground for children, and there's a central parking area. So we were just leaving that area, and a car pulled up. This very nice Indian man got out, and he was lost. And Ananda Village is in the middle of nowhere, so people don't just come there by chance. And so he said, "Is this the meditation retreat?" that's on another nearby piece of land. And so we gave him directions, and then we said, we live in India part of the year. And I think most of you know we have had a flat up in Gargaon in NCR, but that's no more. Now we're shifting to Pune. So we'll be living in Pune, closer to you all. So maybe you come visit us sometime. But anyway, so this man said, we're always so happy to meet an Indian native in America because we miss all of you. And so we said, oh, we live in Pune. Where are you from? He said, I'm from Pune too. So he said, I was born there. We said, oh, we live there now too. So it was so nice to meet him. He was going up to spend some time at the meditation retreat. But on our topic today, I wanted to pick it up from a little different thread. And Jyotish was talking about doing your work with the thought of God. But let's look at the story of Mary and Martha. It's very well known in the Christian teachings. But think about it. Mary and Martha were two sisters. And also another interesting thing, you've maybe heard that Christ raised Lazarus from the dead. Lazarus was the brother of Mary and Martha. So they were all a family of devotees. And their master was Christ, Jesus. But if we think of Mary and Martha not as two outward people, but as parts of our own mind, just as Master interpreted the Bhagavad Gita, all the characters, as parts of our own mind, then we can think, and so these are two parts of our own mind in their relationship to the Guru, to Master. And I find this very helpful because very often in our inner life, in our meditation practice, we can start leading with the Martha energy. I've got to do this. I've got to energize and do my Hangsa and Om and Kriya Yoga. And it becomes very, just like Martha, get very busy, got to get it all done. But there's little Mary, and that's part of ourselves too, thank goodness. And Mary's just sitting there, and she's absorbing the vibrations of the Master. And we need to remember this in our meditation. Yes, we have to do the techniques that Master gave us, no doubt. But don't do them with a sense of busyness or compulsion. If you don't have enough time in the morning, if you're rushed, then say, okay, Master, I'll sit here for 5 minutes, but I will do it with a sense of peace, a sense of absorption in your presence. That's the secret of meditation. Remember, Master said the secret of meditation is receptivity, of deep meditation. And attunement is receptivity. And we can't be receptive if our minds are racing. Oh, I have to do this, I have to do that. Okay, now I'll get my own board and do this. That's not absorbing the vibrations of the Guru, of God. So we need to remember that, even in the midst of activity. I love that passage from the Gita that said, he is wise who finds activity in inactivity and inactivity in activity. I love that passage. It's something that I try to work on because you think, oh, I've got to do this and that and I have this problem, and then you come to the point and you just think, let God do it. He'll do a much better job than I ever would. And so it is with our meditation. If we can stop thinking, I've got to do it, and we do it with the most sincerity, don't we? I want to be a good disciple, so I will do this for you, Master. But take it the next step and just try to think of Mary who just was sitting quietly at the Guru's feet. And when you do your sadhana and your practices, try just to do them with a sense of absorbing the Master's vibration, sitting at his feet, offering yourself with great devotion. And don't get so, we can get very technical and we've seen at Ananda there were people who were just very proud of their sadhana and how many hours a day they were meditating, but they didn't have attunement. And then there were people that were simple and humble and were trying their best, serving others with kindness. And those are the people who stayed on the path, stayed on as disciples. So in your sadhana, really, if you can find the way to do your techniques without tension, without a sense of compulsion, but with joyful self-offering. Once when we read this in Swami's autobiography, The New Path, once at the early days with Master, Swami was trying so hard to be a good disciple and to really meditate. And one time he said to Master, and yet he felt he was not making good progress with his meditation. And he said to Master, "Am I not trying hard enough?" And Master said, "You're trying too hard. It's creating tension." And so remember those words, they're important. When you feel that tension coming, just breathe and say, "God, you know I'm sincere, you know I'm trying. Guide my depth in meditation. Take me the next step. I can't do this on my own. How could I ever do this? It's far beyond my capacity." And then that also translates when we can have a meditation like that, where we just can feel the peace and of offering ourselves to God. We can go deeper in our meditation, then we can go deeper in Kriya. It isn't outward, it becomes a very inward experience. And the more we have that inward experience, then when we go out in the world, we carry that with us. We carry that peace. We carry that sense of ease and of I love the expression, one of the chants, floating on the breeze of bliss. Just floating on that bliss. And that it doesn't come through tension. So it's a dynamic as devotees. We always have to try to balance, because we have to try. We can't just say, "Oh, I'm going to sit and be in bliss." That won't get us there. But if we get tense about it, then we also lose the attunement and the contact with God. So you just have to find the balance of making the best effort you can, but with a deep sense of inner peace and inner absorption of the Master's presence. And then you will begin to go deeper in meditation. And it's, again, one of the beautiful chants that Master gave us, "Who is in my temple? All the doors do open themselves. All the lights do light themselves." We don't open the doors. We don't light the lights. Who does? God does. Guruji does. They open the doors, they light the lights. And just remember that. We have to be there with our light held aloft, but we can't light it. We have to be there waiting at the door, but we can't open it. Master opens that door. So let's think of Mary and Martha, these two devotee sisters. They're part of us, and they're trying to find the way to serve the Master inwardly with great devotion and love. And with Master's grace, we will all grow closer and closer to finding our own inner joy and to become one with the light of God. It's His gift, and we incarnated in the time when His teachings are just being disseminated globally, and what a blessing this is in all of our lives. So we want to give you all a chance now, if you have any thoughts or questions, or offer us a samosa, whatever you would like to do.
A dosa.
A dosa.
One thing we thought, because often in these question moments, someone is shy to break the silence, and so we'd like you all to break the silence this time. If you could, yes, we are aware of a very common hand that goes up first. However, we thought it would be fun if you could just greet Jyotish and Devi ji by just saying your name. If we could just go around the room saying your name. Of course, almost all of you they know and they've met you before, but some are new. And so if you could just go through and just greet them and just say your name. Okay? So, oh no, don't stand you go out of the camera.
Yeah.
So, you say your name, Vidya? I mean, sorry. Babu.
Bindu. Malak. Saruja.
Saravana.
Next to Bindu.
Moni.
Hi, Moni.
Deepak.
Hi.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, question for you.
Yes.
Did you start a meditation group in Coimbatore?
We are connected through WhatsApp, but
Okay.
Mr. Selvaraj, he hosts that in his place.
Okay.
How are you both?
Yeah. Okay.
How are you both?
You're very
Very
well.
well,
So
very
nice
well.
to see you.
So glad to see you.
Nidhi Sharma. Naseem ji. How are you all? Happy to see you all.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
I'm Radhika. Nice to see you again. Ashwini.
Ashwini.
Satyashri. Nice to see you all.
Vijay, nice to see you. Tulsi. Jyoti. Darshan. Nikhil.
Durga. Vani. The waves are rejoicing. Nice to see you, Sharmila.
Sairam. Master.
Oh.
Mary.
Buster.
Mary. Lakshman Priya.
Yogesh.
Kartik.
Rajesh. Prasanna.
And there were a few people between Bindu and Babu who were trying to get out of it. Like here. Yeah.
We know you have names.
You must have names. Okay, and Malar, you're there in the back corner,
Yeah,
right?
she said
Yeah,
hi, but
okay.
she's kind of...
Okay, yeah. All right, so, questions? Okay, Purni.
It's a question on forgiveness. When people are spiteful, to what extent we should go to forgive them?
Can you say that again more loudly, Purni?
Prasanna, can you repeat it? Because you're closer to the...
Yeah.
No, okay.
Is this okay?
Easier if it's done close to the computer.
Is this okay? You come here.
Slowing down.
Gee, when people are spiteful, more than once, twice, thrice, to what extent we should go to forgive them? Sometimes it gets so difficult to forgive.
It's very difficult to forgive. You mean if they are hurtful multiple times, how far should we go in order to forgive? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
Well, there are a couple of ways of answering that. First of all, if people are continually attacking, sometimes it's best to stand up for ourselves So, but don't confuse forgiveness with standing up for yourself. Because forgiveness is more about working with your own inner self. If you don't forget, if it's like someone comes and does something and they inject poison in you, if you don't forgive, you keep that poison inside. And so forgiveness is not so much about helping them, it's about helping you rid yourself of holding on to that poison. So one way of doing that is to reframe what the action is. So instead of you thinking, oh, they're hateful, they're nasty, they're attacking me, try to think they're a little bit mentally ill. They don't know how to behave. They don't have any peace in their heart. They have anger, and they're expressing that toward me. And so you distance the attack from your own, that it's attacking you personally. As a friend of Swami's was concerned about how people viewed him, and he was constantly wondering how this person thought of him and that person. And this boy's mother said, well, I hate to break this to you, but the fact is you aren't important enough to people for them to think about you all the time. And so most of the time, those angry actions are not directed toward you. They're just an expression of frustration within that person. And so if you can kind of separate the person from the action, forgive the person. You don't have to forgive the action, but forgive the person. That'll cleanse that poison out of your own system.
Yes, that's a very good advice. And, we all go through this one way or another. People are unkind, there's misunderstanding, they hurt us either intentionally or unintentionally. But I think if we can think of forgiveness less in terms, if we think of it in terms of what you did is okay, that doesn't help anybody. If someone is beating you with a stick, if you say, I forgive you, they'll just keep doing it. But if you think in terms, it's another way of saying what Jyotish just said, think of forgiveness more in terms of detachment. Like, I don't agree with your behavior. I don't inwardly accept the way you're treating me. I don't approve of it. It isn't right. You have to stand up for yourself. But at the same time, I don't have a choice. I can't change your behavior, so I detach myself from it. And you just remove yourself from their ability to hurt you. You just say, I don't expect you to change, but I can change. I can not have expectations that you will be different, and I will be inwardly detached. And in that way, so think of forgiveness as, instead of saying, oh, it's okay, I forgive you, and then but I know you're going to hurt me again. Don't think of it as that, but just think of it more, I inwardly withdraw and do not accept your attitude. But I understand that God is in you too, and I'm not going to foster hatred or resentment against you, but I will inwardly withdraw. Sometimes that's the best we can do. So thank you for that question, though. It's something everybody has to deal with. Okay, other things people would like to ask about? Dr. Vani?
What is conscience? Is it the voice of God? In school they used to bring into our ear, this is the voice of God, you must bring it. Or is it a set of values which we are having in ourselves? Conscience.
So what is conscience? Is it the voice of God, or is it a set of values that we have had from before?
That's a wonderful question.
Yeah, it's a very good question. Thank you. You know, it's both. It's a set of values internally that we have, but Master said, when I'm gone, I will speak to you through your conscience. So we might hold that set of values, but why does our conscience get activated about something? That's God activating that value in ourselves that said, oh, I really shouldn't have acted that way. I shouldn't have done that. So it's both a personal set of values and a way for God to speak to us. You know, it's like asking whether your mobile is your own mobile, or when your mobile rings and it's a guru speaking to you through the mobile, then it's no longer the mobile, it's the channel for the guru to speak to you. And so your conscience is like your inner mobile, and it's there, and it's what the Master or what God uses to speak to you. So it's part of your intuition, but it is a personal set of values also.
Because you're also involved with music, because of Dharmini leading the choir, a lot of Swami songs are coming to mind, and he has that wonderful children's song, "Give me a light to light my way, truth is the light, so wise men say." And so that truth of Dharma, of righteousness, of right behavior, that's our guide for our actions and our thoughts. And that truth is from God, but it's in each one of us. So I think, and we have to remember this, even the worst criminal, the mass murderer, whatever it is, they have a conscience too. On some level, their soul knows that what they're doing is wrong. You know, there's a wonderful documentary movie that we saw called Doing Time, Doing Vipassana, and it was filmed in India in a very large prison. I believe it was outside of Delhi, if I'm correct. 10,000 men, very bad conditions. And they got a new warden, and she happened to be a woman. Interesting that a woman would want to be a warden of a prison, but she was. And she was a practicer of Vipassana, meditation, mindfulness. And she introduced it in the prison. And at first, no one was interested. But then one or two people, men, started coming, the prisoners, mainly so probably they were so bored there was nothing else to do. But they began sitting for first a very short time, and then longer and longer. And it began to change them. And the other prisoners saw these men have a different quality about them. And more people started coming. They had to set up a huge tent. And in this movie, they interviewed a man who had been a serial murderer. He had murdered many people. And he said, you know, it was as though my conscience was dead. I had no remorse for the people that I had killed. I didn't even have a connection that I had done anything wrong. And then when I started stilling my mind and going more within, for the first time I felt remorse. And he asked to have a meeting with the parents of a young man he had murdered. And they came, and he had begged for their forgiveness. And they gave it to him, and they began visiting him. And they eventually ended up adopting him as their own son. But that conscience is within each one of us. It's from God, but it's alive within us. And the more we try to connect with God, the more that conscience is awakened within us. And it informs all of our actions and thoughts.
If I could just add a PS to that question. what about when our so-called conscience is telling us how bad we are, and it's some other voice masquerading as conscience?
Well, other voices can masquerade as conscience, certainly. And some people have complexes that are carried over from past lives where no matter how good they try to be, they always judge themselves by the little bit that they've done wrong instead of the 95% that they've done right. And so it's you have to keep these things in balance as much as you're able to. But if you're constantly criticizing yourself, don't take that as God's voice working through your conscience.
One time Swamiji gave us some very good advice, and I've really held on to it all these years. He said, remember, any inner promptings that are coming from God will make you feel better about yourself, not worse, not diminished. Anything that makes you feel diminished about yourself, that's coming from the dark force, from Satan, he used the word. But I have found that so helpful. When I start getting down on myself, I think, that's not God talking to me, that's the darkness. And then and not to feel, oh, I'm so great, but just to say, I am what I am, but I know God loves me. And then that's from God.
Okay, maybe one more question.
The yellow hand in the front.
I just wanted to add.
Radhika has a question, but we'll answer both questions. Start processing.
We'll say that it's a tie, so now we have to answer both.
Okay, you start processing.
My question is, we try to change ourselves so many times, but sometimes we try to change other person also, and it's so difficult. I know it's the wrong thing to do, but I'm talking about very small things, like I want to declutter my house, I want to remove unnecessary stuff. But there are other people living in the house, and I can't remove their stuff. But I want the house to be decluttered. I don't know how to go about this. So my question is, how do we change ourselves and try not to change other person and still be happy? Yeah, that's my question also.
So how do we, we don't try to change other people in big ways, but we may want to change them in small ways, like, what were you saying? Small things like don't leave your...
Decluttering the house.
Yeah, decluttering the house. Don't leave your junk around the house, but then somehow they don't listen. And so, what do we do? That was my terrible paraphrase of your question.
Well, there's a difference between trying to change people and trying to create like a harmonious team. So, I think often if we think, I'm going to change that person, and then they'll act in a different way, and then I'll be happy. That doesn't usually work, I found. But if we can have better communication and just say, okay, we all share a home, for example. It's all of our responsibility to keep it in order, and so because we all have busy, how can we all do this together? And then you let the person be a part of it instead of just you pushing the energy in a certain way. But then the question comes, well, what if they don't do anything? What if nothing changes? Then I think it's important not to step in and say, okay, I'll be a martyr, I'll do it all myself, but just keep working to create communication and teamwork. And if people feel they're being invited, not criticized or judged or pushed, then they're more likely to help. And try to find, we use this technique a lot in the Ananda schools. Try to feel what will motivate that person. For example, once we had a group of students, this was boys, and they were teenagers, and the teacher was trying to teach them about service to others. And he said, there's some people who have a very poor house, very run down. Let's go and paint their house. And they said, no, we don't want to do that. And then he looked around and he said, our classroom, the painting needs to be done. Let's paint our own classroom. This they were interested in because it was self-interest. And then they got motivated and they realized it was fun to paint. And then he said, well, let's paint the outside of the dormitory. So then they painted that. And then finally he got them, look at these poor people. Let's go help them paint their house. And they did. And so gradually find the things that will motivate them. It's working with people is such an art, requires such subtlety and such delicacies of touch. So just try, don't criticize, don't judge, don't blame, but try to find how you can motivate people to change behavior.
We had a family here that they came from China, but they had 3 daughters and 2 daughters and 2 sons. And they had a list of everyone's chores posted on the refrigerator. And then everybody could see who was supposed to do what. And they could also see if somebody hadn't done their chore. And so that worked really well for them. Some families it might not work, but anyway, that's
We had a friend who was married, and her husband was very sloppy, and he always left his clothes all over the floor, and she nagged him, it didn't work, help. And then finally she was praying to God, what can I do? And she said, and God spoke to me. Divine Mother spoke to me and said, my dear, that's just the way he is. and she said, okay. And God spoke to me, and I think she just kind of accepted it. But anyway.
In the final analysis, try to be even-minded and cheerful no matter what happens.
But, there's an expression, I don't know if you've heard it, you can catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. And so just see what you can do to positively motivate people. Okay, the yellow arm in the front row.
I wanted to thank you about the blogs you have been sending. It's been constantly re-inspiring us, especially the one most recent blog about the 5 steps to self-realization. So that looking at those words, especially self-righteousness and moving on to self-honesty and self-acceptance, that kind of really helped to define more clearly how we express ourselves. So those words really helped bring a lot of clarity. So thanks a lot for re-inspiring us every week.
It's just Master's teachings. Then.
Yeah.
But, we love, nobody has to change their behavior. Everyone's perfect. But Prem, thank you. We so enjoy hearing from you, and Prasanna too, so often. They comment on the blog all the time. So, okay, dear friends. Well, we'll be back in India in September. Wait.
And we have something to do before September.
Oh my.
So, Santa came. Santa Chennai. Chennai Santa. There's a few gifts.
My goodness.
Here's a card.
And that card was drawn by Lakshmi. Lakshmi, Can you just wave? That's Lakshmi's card.
Beautiful.
Here's some
really beautiful.
How are your boys, Lakshmi?
Well, we read these later. A lot of notes from many people. Thank you all so much.
Okay. This is a gift from Satya.
This is from Satya.
Oh, my goodness.
Beautiful.
That is beautiful. Thank you. Thank you.
She wrote something on the back.
And she wrote something on the back. Beautiful. Beautiful. This is a treasure. Thank you. Thank you. You know, Master comes to us through all of you, really. So thank you.
Okay, so this one is for Jyotish Ji, and this is for Devi Ji.
This really is like
Christmas
time or Diwali or something.
So, you know, we're starting to think that the only reason Dharmaraj and Dharmini come back every year is they can bring the presents from all of you. Takes up half of their luggage.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you. It's a great artist lives and there are 3 magazines there. Oh, that's wonderful. 3 different artists.
Nice.
Oh, I'll treasure that. I'll have a good look through those and hope that it inspires me.
Nice.
The problem is I haven't had much time to try to do any painting, but maybe this will break the barrier.
And this beautiful gift, 10 spiritual lessons from the life for the modern world from my grandfather, Mahatma Gandhi, so his grandson.
Wow, beautiful.
Wow. There'll probably be lots of stories we can share, you know, in teaching with others. Oh, thank you. I've never heard of this book, so this is very nice.
Wow.
You know, we had...
Is everything okay? You're sort of looking...
Lots of gifts.
Did we give the right gift to the right people?
Okay. It says Devi.
Yeah.
That's for both of you guys, and that one's for both of you.
Okay.
You know, Swami said when he was little, a little boy, when his parents would bring them presents, they would always fight over them. Like, no, I like yours better. I like yours. So once the father gave them 2 of the brothers, Swami and his brother, these 2 gifts, and they were fighting over them. And then the father walked in. He was a wise man. He said, "Oh, I gave you the wrong gifts," and he switched. Because they were saying his is better than mine.
I want yours, and he said, "Oh, I gave you the wrong gifts," and then they started fighting the other way.
We should have brought scissors.
Oh, we can manage. Oh, this looks beautiful.
Oh, a beautiful shirt. Oh. Wow.
Very nice. Oh, beautiful fabric.
Yeah, beautiful.
Oh.
Beautiful shawl.
Beautiful. Wow, that is beautiful.
Really lovely.
Beautiful, thank you.
2 shirts. Oh, nice. Very nice.
Oh.
These will get a lot of use.
That's gorgeous. Yeah. Oh, how beautiful. Just beautiful. It's a little box. Whoa.
Oh, rose petals.
Oh my gosh, it's beautiful. And look at the box, Jyotish. It's so beautiful. These are lovely gifts, everyone. Thank
that's
you.
That's really lovely.
Thank you. We don't have any presents for you.
Just your presence is a present.
So we'll put this on our altar.
Yeah. Okay, dear friends. Well, try to drink, stay hydrated, don't get too hot.
Lots of electrol.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't argue when you're in the kitchen.
Well, you are treasures.
Yeah.
You are treasures.
So nice to see you all.